I'm opening. We have an eye, sort of a nostril, 2 teeth. One of the teeth has a small cavity. Close call, folks, but I think we got here just in time.
Presented by Maria Menounos and Kevin Undergaro. This is Anatomy of a Movie. In-depth discussions and breakdowns of various movie titles. And now that you've seen the movie, let the dissection begin.
That epicness. Love it. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Anatomy of a Movie. We are talking today Sin City, A Dame to Kill For. We have Demetri Panos on the panel.
Hello, movie fans.
We have Sara Stretton.
Hi, this was really not the intro I was expecting.
No.
I don't know what I was expecting, but...
Electronic dance music is the new thing,
Okay.
so we went with it.
All right.
It's hitting Old Town like crazy.
It's hitting old.
And I'm your host, Phil Svitek. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I have my thoughts, and I have the perfect kind of summary of why I love this movie. But before we get to you, Demetri, Sara has a checklist of what made this movie great. And I want her to go down this entire checklist, and we're going to check as we go.
No.
Yes.
Why? You've been building up this whole week. Now you got to share with the fans.
I'm just a really big Sin City fan in general, and so when I went into Sin City, A Dame to Kill For, I was like, it just needs a couple things and I'll be happy. I knew. Thank you,
Let's
Phil.
go down the checklist. So,
I was like,
number one.
We need some awesome visuals.
Okay,
That's
check.
what I'm starting with.
Check.
Maybe a little guts and
Check.
fighting. And, throw in some nudity, and I'm happy.
Check.
Check, check, check.
Yeah.
Oh.
I guess they didn't have, very, high standards to make me happy, but they did very well. That's not to take away from the movie.
No, I guess you
I like
didn't
number
have
3
any
was
high
nudity.
standards. Yeah, number 3 was nudity.
Sorry. Yeah. It's in City. There needs to be sin involved.
Well, it's Basin City.
So there you go. The 3 requirements of Sara Stretton. And I think...
No, that is not the 3 requirements of Sara Stretton. That's 3 requirements of Sin City for Sara Stretton.
Okay, fair
There's
enough.
a difference.
No, but I'm saying because,
you can't
you
just
know
make
what?
any movie with those 3 things and I'll love
No,
it.
well, we
it-
are talking Sin City. I think we all
Yeah.
get it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think-
Just want to make sure.
Got it. Well, you have made your point. I like that checklist because Sin City, you said it best, and now I don't know why you're being shy, but you go into this movie, you know what you're going to expect, you know what you want out of it, and that's what you're going to get, and it's going to deliver on those things, and it did, at least for me, at least what it sounds like to Sara. Demetri, you.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the movie's biggest fault is that it was 9 years too late. That's the biggest misstep that the movie took. But going into it, I had hoped that I would get what I'd seen in the first movie. And, to your list, I wanted it to be striking. It delivered everything that I expected Sin City to be. And then I do have to throw this in. These aren't shameless plugs for XD and all, but I did see this in 3D, where the first movie was not in 3D. The movie did look spectacular, and in the 3D format, which there's some irony about the visual effects company that worked on this, in that 3D format, man, did this visual universe, this chroma key noir, looked fantastic. It leapt off the screen, and even with the black and whites and the various color hues, looked amazing. It delivered on that. It delivered on the hard-boiled, noirish, pulp fiction noir dialogue, which I love. And it had that stylized violence that, I had expected that carried over. For me, it delivered. It may, there are things you could say that weren't as good as the original, but for the most part, it really, really worked.
To add on to Demetri's, I do think a big proponent of why this film isn't getting the best reviews or the biggest reception or making the money that I think it should is because it is coming out so late. And on top of that, I think that while I went into it, and it sounds like Demetri went into it, expecting just another Sin City, a lot of people went in expecting to get that same, wow, I'm experiencing something totally new that they got with the first one. So people went into the first one and when they were like, wow, what is this? This is a whole new, genre type of film. I'm like, no, you're seeing an extension of that. They're looking for that same, I've never seen anything like this before. It is a sequel. You have seen something like this before. That's why you're going to see the sequel. And I think so people were craving that feeling. And I was like, I don't know how you're going to find that from something that's supposed to be.
I'm going to have the
An
perfect
extension.
analogy for this.
Yeah.
At least in my mind.
Okay.
This is like a great pay-per-view wrestling event. Because for the most
Where
part,
are
you can interchange some characters, right?
Sure.
Just like you get with wrestling.
Yeah.
In Sin City, you have kind of promos almost, right? In the beginning, we kind of get teased of what's going to come up later,
Sure.
right?
Mm-hmm.
We have matches, quote unquote, which is the various stories. Some go longer, some go shorter, and then we get the main event, and then we are almost left with a cliffhanger and ready for Monday Night Raw.
Okay.
Now, will Monday Night Raw come? I don't know. But that is why I love Sin City. It's just because it reminds me of all those things, and that's why I can love it.
Yeah, I think, and maybe we'll probably talk about marketing later on down the line, but I think what made the original Sin City work was there was some education, they really focused on characters, they focused on the look, they focused a bit on Frank Miller, Robert Rodriguez, that this movie was going to look completely different than anything that you've ever seen, whether you've read the graphic novels or not. And going into this, they didn't redefine anything. They didn't re-educate an audience to say, you're going to go in to see something. Like, we know that this was 9 years ago, but there should have been a little bit of re-education to let, that these are characters that you're already aware of. The marketing could have been a little bit of a misstep. It wasn't out there as much as the original Sin City was. But a lot has happened in 9 years, too, so that maybe people thought that it was old. This way of filmmaking, all in green screen. We talked about 300. That movie was Gravity. A lot was a lot. So this technology has been in use a lot.
People are
within
getting
9
more
years.
used to it, and now people are also getting a little more critical of it.
Right.
Where now there didn't used to be as much of a line of that's too much. Like you
Sure.
went too far in your graphics because everyone was so shocked by it.
Absolutely.
And now technology has progressed to a point that they can do so much. They can edit every single thing on a shot that people are now being like, nope, learn to control. Learn to control how much blood splatter there is. Learn to control how real it actually looks. And we as an audience are being conditioned to that from all these other movies that have happened in between Sin City 1
But
and
that's
now.
part of it. I hate that only because, yes, the visualness of it is fine, but there's also the story. So for me, I'm a person that loves film noir. And
too.
so, in addition to getting all this stunning visual effects and images, there's that making fun of film noir and
Absolutely.
the cheesiness of those lines and whatever else. And I'm drawn in on multiple levels.
It's funny that you say making fun of, where I look at it as almost paying homage to.
Yeah,
it goes to a pulpier level than Big Sleep, Double Indemnity, which Double Indemnity is heavily lifted. I mean, that the Eva Green character, the femme fatale, you can clearly see where, I wouldn't compare this to Double Indemnity, but you can see where the inspiration comes from. So it was inspired by all these things. Plus, I believe it was also inspired by those pulp novels.
Yeah.
And so, I love that kind of, if you want to call it cheesy dialogue, but I love that. I like to call it hard-boiled
That's the
dialogue.
thing, and I think it comes out of Frank Miller's mind as a loving note to how these characters talk
Absolutely.
and speak. It's not let's heighten it for the sake of heightening. It's like that is Frank Miller's mind.
Right.
Like people say lines like I
Sure.
don't let the monster out, and like these are their thoughts. This is said out
Absolutely.
with heart, not with like, oh, let's make it the biggest line we can make it.
And in his heyday, too, Frank Miller, he liked to, he turned genres on their heels. I mean, his acclaim to fame was The Dark Knight Returns because he brought Batman into a world, or he created a world in which we had never seen Batman before. And he made it grittier, more violent, he made it darker. And he actually, many can say that he, in a sense, revolutionized the comic business, saved the comic book industry, because he gave something fresh, unique to do. He did the same with Sin City. And even, I believe he did some Daredevils. He worked all over. unfortunately, the flip side of that is, to an extent, he became Frank Miller, that is, almost became a caricature of his former self, that he believed the hype. I mean, I worked, in a sense, with Frank Miller. I was at Lionsgate, and we released this movie called The Spirit.
Yeah.
So, there's all things involved. But when he was tops, and you can't
And The
take away
Spirit
what
came
he
out
did.
after Sin City.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah, absolutely.
So in the sense, people were looking to that to fill the void of not getting a second city right off the bat,
Right.
and that didn't quite deliver in the same way.
No,
did not.
and that was him. He wrote it, he directed it, and he really felt that he was the man. And
It's just kind of ironic that it did come from that part, and then Sin City comes from a place where when he wrote the comic, he was
Yeah.
like, this could never be a movie.
right,
And look what Sin City has done and how
Right.
people have responded from what he didn't think was possible.
right,
And obviously was persuaded by co-directors and whatever.
Right.
And then you look at Spirit, and it's totally different motivation.
of course. And you look at the Spirit of popular, I believe, Will Eisner comic, and then what he does is there was a great cast in The Spirit. It had everything going for it. They cut. At Lionsgate at the time, you cut as good a trailer as you're going to cut. And then, it's an indecipherable movie. It was just awful. But Scarlett Johansson, Samuel Jackson, is it Eva Longoria, I believe, or trying to think, Eva Mendes is in it. And, he had a big cast. And unfortunately, it was a big steaming pile as well. So, but
Yeah, and I think
again,
that was
Frank-
the trend. People wanted to be like, shooting with Rod. People love shooting with Robert Rodriguez because he's so fast, and especially for a movie like this, it's just so fun because anything can be anything. And so, obviously they're very. If you watch we don't get the luxury of seeing the full behind the scenes stuff, but if you watch the first Sin City DVDs and behind the scenes extras,
And they have clips from the second one. You can
they,
find
have,
Yeah,
they
I
have
sent you
clips, but not to
B-roll
the
and
not to the
stuff, yeah.
full extent that
Right.
not yet until we get the Blu-ray and DVD.
Right.
But there was just a passion of the props and things like that. But again, it's just so fun because you can kind of pick up anything and just go with it.
Yeah, and going back to the dialogue, I just went to IMDb, looked up Dame to Kill For. I mean, it's great. It's like Johnny. This is the Joseph Gordon-Levitt character. Sin City's where you go in with your eyes open or you don't come out at all. That's great. John Hardigan, the Bruce Willis character. Death is just like life in Sin City. It always wins. I mean, stuff like that. It's not Pulitzer Prize winning stuff, but when I'm watching Sin City,
it works.
it works.
Well,
It's
in
great.
it's interesting in
Very
terms of the lines you say because and kind of Frank Miller in the first one, he had actually wanted to change some of the dialogue for the movie, and the actor was like, no, let's do it the way it was written.
Right.
You wrote it. Let's do it the way it was written because that's much better. And it's interesting. Again, I don't. It's tough to say how much of that still applies to this movie.
Yeah, because we did get, we got a totally different method of making, I think, for this movie when it comes to storytelling.
Yeah.
Where we have the graphic novel for Sin City, and here we get part graphic novel, which they really tried to identify with more. Then we also had Frank Miller creating stories that were just for this film.
Absolutely.
Or maybe inspired by
Sure.
different ideas he's had through the years, but written for this film and also inspired by the actors. Where instead of creating a character and then finding an actor to play that, he had Joseph Gordon-Levitt to play Johnny, and then got to mold the role around him.
Right.
And that's a totally different perspective, and also to have that in one movie together and A Dame to Kill For, where you're having some things being written as you're shooting and some things you're pulling from, and you're jumping through time and you're jumping through characters who different relationship. That's a lot for, I think, Frank Miller to tackle on this film.
Yeah, and again, coming 9 years after, like the first Sin City, you've got everybody primed because they go into it. It's something that they haven't seen before, and it's sort of kind of. And again, you have to give credit to Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction, which when you break it down, Pulp Fiction in a sense is very episodic. Okay, and Frank Miller takes this a step further.
Yeah.
He's writing the Sin City graphic novels, the comic books, which are very episodic. And it's how do you bring this into a movie so it doesn't come off necessarily as anthology, but as episodic, and it's got to, in one way, shape, or form, characters cross into other stories and whatnot. And it gave us something, it created a world that we'd never seen before.
I would say Pulp Fiction did it for the Western world, but it's because Quentin took it from the Eastern world.
Of course.
So like Chungking Express,
Absolutely.
anything of that nature.
Yeah, and very true. But like again, when you're bringing an audience and everybody sees Sin City, okay, they've seen it, they love it, they get it. But then when you wait 9 years, they've sort of kind of forgotten about it. You know what I'm saying? Like, unless
Could I
you're a
say
fan,
the only, not to cut you off, and we'll get more into casting. The only thing that really good came out of 9 years, waiting 9 years, was that Eva Green was primed and ready to go, only because it would have been Angelina Jolie. And I don't know if
she would have done it.
I don't think she would have done it as much as Eva Green.
Done it.
I don't know. I think Angelina Jolie in her day
That much
would have
nudity.
been-
I just don't even know if did she accept the role or
Like-
did he just want her? Because I think he just wanted her, and I don't think I don't even know if she would have agreed to do that.
Back in the day, she was a little.
More like Tomb Raider.
She was a little like she isn't the older.
But I have a
Angelina
feeling with
Jolie is
Eva
not
Green,
today. Right?
she understands.
Eva
Like
Green
she
was
loves
essentially
to showcase. Like
Her
there's
body.
an old.
She does. She has no inhibitions. I mean, she'll. Oh, we need you to. Oh, okay, that's not a problem.
She
yeah, but you
does
didn't
have a
let me
lot
finish.
of trust in her directors. She does point that out. I mean, I'm a huge Eva Green fan. We jump
too.
through hundred we do, but
And she has a lot of self-confidence.
a lot of self-confidence and a lot of, I think, trust. She'll just be like, yep, they promised me good lighting and they promised me I look beautiful. And she's like, okay.
Yeah, yeah, and
And
you're
people,
right.
people don't complain about it.
9 years gave us Eva
Eva
Green.
Green.
You're right, and there's no argument about that. And I'm all the more happy for it. I love. She appears to relish these kinds of roles, and I love her for it. And man, she just has she's very self-confident. I don't want to say she doesn't have any inhibitions, but
She has this amazing balance in her acting of being able to give up all vanity while like she will go crazy. She doesn't care if she's breaking down or looking evil or looking crazy. And then at the same time, she can just look so beautiful and gorgeous. And she flips back and forth without giving you a notice of when she is going to be that person. She's like, I don't care if you love me, hate me, are scared of
Right.
me, or want me. I'm going to give it all to you, and you can pick which side of me
And
you
I
like
love
best.
there's that line in the movie, like, I don't, because it spoke to it. I was like, I'm enjoying this, but like this seems a little too much. But they had that line of, she's just showing off the goods. That's how she
Right.
makes the sale.
That's
It's
how she
like,
makes-
okay.
That's what she does. And again, to me, vanity would bore. Like to say she doesn't care about vanity. If she was what's the word, slovenly? If she was like obese, and that's someone who has no vanity. I mean, she knows going in that whether she trains for the part, she makes sure that she looks the part and carries it off very well.
But you could give her a role where she's, just covered in blood or cut up or crying or bawling,
True.
and she's not going to hold back to
No.
make it look pretty. She's not going, like, there are people who
It's
want to
hard
be
for her not to
pretty.
look pretty.
Yes, but there are people who
It
want
is.
to be pretty criers, who are like, I want to cry and look beautiful. And while she does, she's not, it's not like she's thinking that.
No,
It's like, I
look-
will scare you. I will do whatever it takes.
For me, Eva Green, with all I've seen her, and I love watching Penny Dreadful. Love seeing her in that. We talked about her in 300. We're going to talk about her in this movie. But to me, her best performance has still been the first time I saw her in Casino Royale. I mean, she was just fantastic in that movie as being a Bond woman who has character. And as the movie goes along, there are just some amazing scenes that she has opposite Daniel Craig that really carries her above and beyond some other Bond women throughout the years. And you just, as a Bond fan, looking at her, she was very hard to not pay attention to. Between her striking pose, her striking eyes, and beautiful features, she became another sort of a Bond woman, or a femme fatale for Bond. That she today, I still think that is her best role. It's not saying I dislike her. She has talent, and she can back it up. I would love to see her. You know, she tried some dark comedy and Dark Shadows and such, but I'd like to see her. How would she play? Can she want to play in like a good romantic comedy? You know, she's talented, and there's no doubt about it. And in this movie, you know, as far as a femme fatale, she's fantastic.
Yeah.
You can't. And in 3D, it was amazing.
I'll give it to her though.
I'm just gonna say.
I was so excited to
Maybe
see
she's
her in this
reaching out.
movie, and then
What?
I
Hi.
don't know. I was so excited to see her in this movie, and I was really concerned in her first two scenes because I didn't quite believe her. And she's so good that you always. And I was like, what is this going on? Like, why don't I believe her completely? And then we do get the turn that she is like this crazy liar, and I'm like, it's even so much better because I was actually like, what am I missing in the first couple of scenes she had?
What I loved about her character, one of the aspects I loved about her character was the fact that like she could play so cheesy. Like I'd go, why are these characters buying this? Like I get what she's going for, and I'm falling for it. Like I get it, and it was like sort of comedic almost, you know, because when she'd play, I need protection. I need to and within the universe of Sin City, you understand why that cop did what he did, even though it was so overperformed. But she delivered what Rodriguez and Miller wanted, and fits right in with that hard-boiled noir that is in Sin City. It was great. It was great.
Before we talk about the full casting, we've talked about there's that 9-year gap, but Demetri, you have a couple more details about it. Part of it's, I know part of it was rewrites from Frank Miller, but there was a bigger issue with Miramax switching over to the Weinsteins. And that whole
which is
debacle. So that's really where the 9-year.
I think that's the genesis. I mean, according to Robert Rodriguez and Frank Miller, once you have a hit the way that Sin City was, and let's break it down. I believe the original Sin City hit about $80 million all in domestically, which for that movie, coming from Miramax, which at the time I believe was still a Disney-owned company, that was a big hit for them. And it was a way for Disney to release a movie like this because, they're not releasing edgy R-rated movies based off of very edgy graphic novels. So for Miramax, 80 million is a good hit. And they wanted to, Robert Rodriguez says, we wanted to strike while the fire was hot, which...
Yeah. And there's no one.
Want to.
There's no one. I mean, in terms of speed and efficiency,
right?
I like Quentin. And Quentin's a little bit different because he'll take time with his movies. Rodriguez can pump these out so fast, because he just shoots whatever he's. Watch his 10-minute film school videos. He just shoots like crazy, and especially with this one, he's like, okay, we got this person for this day. All right, we'll shoot you against the green screen, then we'll shoot this other person whenever they get here. Whatever.
Yeah, and don't
just
forget,
knocks it out.
He does a lot of his own cinematography. He does a lot of his own editing.
A lot of his
you're
music.
His
He does it all in one facility.
Right. And so that is his efficiency. And that's how he was born of being an independent director. He knew that if he wanted to become anything, he was going to have to shoulder it and do it a lot himself. Build up a good crew of people who he still works together with, which is amazing, and it's great. So when you're coming off of the success of Sin City, he and Frank Miller was like, we got to strike while the iron's hot because we don't know how long this is going to last. And unfortunately, at that same time, Disney was getting rid of Miramax. And the Weinsteins were there was this whole studio thing going on, and the Weinsteins were leaving, and they were going to set up their own company. And that left rights issues as to who can release this. And again, this was part of Disney going through a they were changing. They were going, they were changing too. They wanted to start it to hone in and become more PG-13 friendly, where this kind of a movie didn't fit into
more NC-17 than R.
Well, absolutely. And again, working at Lionsgate at the time, Fahrenheit 9/11. The documentary, and I say this not to get off track, but just to give you an idea, that was a Miramax movie. But Disney was feeling that the topic and it being Michael Moore is a little bit too hot, so they sub-distributed the movie through Lionsgate. So Lionsgate technically did the distribution for it so that it wouldn't necessarily be a Miramax, quote-unquote, Disney kind of a movie. So there was a change taking place. And then once the change hit Sin City, Rodriguez, Miller, Miller was given an opportunity to direct and write for The Spirit. Rodriguez had his kids' movies that he wanted to do, his other sequels and other movies and Machete, and he had all these things that he wanted. Grindhouse he worked on, and life just happened. And it wasn't necessarily that Sin City went away, it was just put on a back burner. And, he and Frank Miller continued to stay in touch, and they continued to write. They wanted to write stories for
And it was
this.
always brought up with them, like,
Always.
over the years.
When are we doing this?
Exactly. And it was next year, next 2 years, and it kept getting pushed back.
Yeah.
And I think that they even realized that that it's taken too long.
Yeah.
And it caught up with them. You listen to them on interviews, and there's a little bit of bitterness or resentment, or like, wow, we missed it. And now they're really gung-ho about, well, we want to get this third one out. We already have a story going. But based on what this is doing, that's going to be a hard sell.
I think so. And again, with the Weinsteins, it's, I think marketing played a part, on top of the 9 years, and technology. Technology has grown so much in 9 years that we talked about this earlier. The special effects aren't as
Jaw-dropping.
as
They're
they were
still cool. They're just not
were
as
great.
shocking.
Yeah, I mean, I did
think
love how
they're
this movie
beautiful.
They were.
I think that
aesthetically it was awesome.
the silhouettes, the colors, it just
was great.
works for this
Yeah.
movie. On top of that, I wanted to get more. Are we going to get more into the dissecting part now, Phil?
What would you like to dissect? Open us up.
I'm not leading this. You're leading
fine.
this.
Well, fine. If we're for me, I didn't realize this until Demetri had pointed out. So consider me an ignorant
Well, I was
to
ignorant
Sin
too,
City.
man.
But I did not know, like, when with Josh Brolin and all these people, I thought they were just different characters.
Right.
I did not realize that there was a crossover, and I hate when we recast. And especially in a situation like this, I didn't need them to be the same characters.
No,
They could have been different characters.
And it's interesting. Okay, so we're talking about the Josh Brolin segment and Dame to Kill For,
particular.
and literally, my friend Ryan, like halfway through that episode, he leaned over to me. He goes, "You do realize?" He goes, that's the Dwight character, the Clive Owen character from the original Sin City. And I was like, "What?" I had no idea going into it, no idea, and. So I sat back and I was like, huh. And thinking about things, the reason why he was recast is because it is known within the Sin City comics, in the Sin City movie, there's a throwaway line that character had facial reconstruction. And they tried to...
Clive was supposed to in the
do it.
end of Sin City, A Dame to Kill For.
Right. And which would have been a perfect bridge, but he couldn't do it because of the nick. So I don't know. It didn't necessarily...
I don't know if that's completely true. Like, there's weird...
I had read that it was like he was busy.
It seems like there's something under the table, because some people are saying he was busy, he had other obligations. Then you go and, according to Rodriguez and Miller, their story is that once Brolin got on the set, they really liked him, and just in case, they got him prosthetics, and then they didn't want him to have to give up the role halfway through, so then they kept him.
Then I would say shame on them, because it would have been a nice bridge. Had he not told me, had my friend not told me that, I would have gone through that whole series, that whole not really knowing, because there was nothing that looked close to Clive Owen.
Yeah.
Even when they redid his
nor
hair.
was it important.
Well,
I'm sure
how
it's important to Frank.
yeah. I think it's important.
No offense to
He-
Frank, I don't have that tie-in, and I don't need that tie-in.
No, but see, again, I blame the 9 years, because had it been shortly after the first Sin City,
They would have unlocked.
that would have had that education. Like, I had no idea, and it sort of kind of took me out of the movie for that brief time. Going, I mean, I loved his storyline, but then it's his prequel to what he becomes, because that character Dwight as Clive Owen has a great that episode is fantastic with Brittany Murphy and Benicio del Toro. And it would have been nice for that if I'd known about that bridge, going, oh, okay, because even Rosario Dawson in Sin City, the first one, like, she talks to
Had
Dwight
so much
about
resentment.
right, and there was a reason being And I just would have liked
Well,
to have been,
it worked well because we did get the girls of Sin City.
Yes.
And I believe the only one that was recast was Miho, Jamie King, which there's a great interview with her on AfterBuzz TV Spotlight on.
Yeah, we should.
Wait, was Jamie King Miho? No, it was.
Which one?
No, Jamie King wasn't Miho.
Jamie Chung.
Jamie Chung was Miho.
People are going to hate me for that.
No, there's two
Phil
Jamies.
Banish.
Jamie Chung was great too, though.
Yeah.
I thought she was fantastic
As me,
as Miho.
I think
it's a great character.
I also want to go back to something you've touched on was just the education level for this film. I think that was something that was missing. Like for me, I was so absorbed by the stories that were going on, and that I felt like the acting and the characters were fleshed out, that was distracting enough. But in whether it have been in marketing or more, I don't know, exposition to like get us across who was who, where they were in time, what was a prequel and what wasn't. Like the audience was in no way given that direction.
No.
Prepped, angled, like you were just kind of thrown in and you just had to enjoy the story and not try and puzzle where it was supposed to be.
Right.
Or else you could have taken the entire movie trying to figure out what time zone you were in.
Sure.
Like where in order, because that was not explained well.
But it
at
does.
all.
I give it credit because with Mickey Rourke, it starts off, "Where the hell am I?
Right.
What is going on?"
Right.
But if you have an audience that really wants to figure that question out when he asks, you're screwed for the entire movie because you're literally like,
It's true.
this is all I'm going to be thinking about is where I am. Like you
Right.
have to be able to kind of take that question and be like, oh, I'm not going to know for the entire movie. And you just have to kind of be like, okay, take
Right.
the action as it comes.
Yeah, and again, like the first Sin City was marketed on characters, the way it looked, and something fresh for cinema, and you got to go see this at the movies. And this one would seem to focus on more of the actors that were in it. It focused on the talent more so. It's like, look who we got in this movie, and oh yeah, Bruce Willis is back, and this is back, and they really didn't tell us much story-wise, and they were hoping that the fans from 9 years ago were going to be interested enough in coming to come back.
Let's talk about the newcomers because I feel like the old people, like Jessica Alba, she was second billed, right? Mm-hmm. She didn't really do too much in the movie versus like let's say obviously Josh, but even
Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
But then Ray Liotta.
Right.
I love that little bit.
Uh-huh.
But if I looked at it from a wider perspective, not as a fan and things like that, totally didn't need that. And I felt like it was like, okay, we have Ray Liotta. Let's see what we can do. Mm-hmm. And it's a chance to add more sex,
sure,
more violence because we got that a little bit.
I think that one of the reasons Jessica Alba was a top billed and the character of Nancy, for me, it was a very big part of chapter in this movie and did stick out to me. But on top of that, I think that the relationship between Frank Miller and Rodriguez and Jessica Alba is part of that. Why she's so good. Like, she is coming back. On top of that, she's really inspired Frank Miller in the role of Nancy. Like, she's one of the actors that has caused him to expand, and I know that in plans, if they do make a third one, she is one of the characters that will definitely continue on, that they already have in mind for a next storyline. So maybe, I think as an audience, there were other characters that I connected to more in A Dame to Kill For, but from the directing perspective, I think from them being involved in the story, she is a big inspiration point. And
she's the crossover. Everyone goes to that bar, and everyone that's ever walked in is always like, that Nancy.
And when you're talking about the original Sin City, she is the center image of it. She is on every poster. She is
her
always
and Bruce Willis were absolutely.
And it's always marketed with her. Yeah. And so crossing over, they expanded that, and she'll be the next. If there is more, she is what's carrying them on.
And on top of that, she is a Robert Rodriguez muse. I mean, Robert Rodriguez loves to put her in movies, and she has said, if I don't make any other movies other than working with him, I'm happy. Yeah. She goes, that's just.
And he just kind of calls her up and it's like, well, you shoot a couple days, and then she just goes.
She's good. And again, you have to, I think they tried to focus on the carryovers because you needed some familiarity to know that, well,
Yeah.
Bruce Willis is going to be in this movie. He was in the first one. Jessica Alba, Marv is going to. Mickey Rourke is going to be in this movie.
The senator.
Powers Boothe was in there. So again,
I liked him a lot.
Oh no,
He did a great job.
Dawson.
He's a great villain. He's a really great villain. But again, there was nothing you could have asked if somebody was paying attention more. Like, what happened to Clive Owen? Well, his character's in it, but he's not. And remember this one line of dialogue that Brittany Murphy said in the first Sin City? It's like, well, I met him while you were getting your face reconstructed or something. And that's such a throwaway line. I had to rewatch Sin City to figure that out, and that he became Dwight.
I think that when you realize who it's supposed to be, it gives the story more. Luckily enough, like, their adventures are so filled out that you don't actually, I think, need to know that. I think if it makes the rewatchability better. I think it makes watching them together better, because you do know all of that and you can put it together, those small lines. You can see the relationship more between him and, like, Rosario Dawson. You can see his effect on the Sin City girls more. But in general, like, what we saw from him about the attachment with the camera, the affairs, all of his arc was enough that I didn't need to know that he was.
I was better off finding out. I'll say that, because that character too is so chivalrous, and he does have that code of them being a knight in shining armor and protecting the women that can't protect themselves, and
they can protect.
So. And just being a part of that. So I don't know, like, finding out after and reading about it, and then watching the original Sin City, going, okay, wow, it really would have been cool. Could they have at least gotten that bridge? But he was a great character.
Yeah.
In terms of the acting too, we talked about it a little bit, but to me, you say homage, but it's also like, in terms of film noir, you would never have this many. Like, Humphrey Bogart would not share the screen with this amount of people. Like, Christopher Lloyd, for all intents and purposes, you could have had anybody in that role.
Absolutely.
But it's funny because he's shooting up and he's like, okay, $40, okay, and the shoes, great. Jeremy Piven, I actually, if
he was a recast character.
I would have preferred him as the torn up detective, rather than just like the asshole who's like, hey, you know what? You're falling for her. Because it's so typical of Jeremy.
Yeah, I agree with that. I thought that's where it was going to head, and I not was disappointed, but I think they could have switched.
And they could have had more fun with that.
Mm-hmm.
But the gentleman who played the detective, Meloni, or
the guy who plays a detective on also the TV show,
Christopher Meloni.
Yeah. I mean, I like him as an actor. I thought he did fine, and
Mort.
And again, it just falls into that. You knew exactly once she started sobbing to him. Okay, this is where this is going. However, how far it went and how it ended up, that journey. To me, I found that chapter to be very interesting, and Eva Green's continued.
It was certainly the longest chapter, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
But speaking of which, Dennis Haysbert is back in that role, so it was good to see him.
He was
He's
recast, though.
Yeah?
Yeah, it was Michael Clark Duncan played that character.
He
and
passed
again,
away.
It was a prequel. Because
here's what I will say. That's terrible on me, but they look so much alike. He
was a little bit thinner, and Michael Clark Duncan was, and in Sin City, his eye was already out, I believe.
Yeah.
So but Dennis Haysbert was great because
they matched them. They matched them well.
I thought
unlike Clive Owen and Brolin, this was like a really good match.
I thought it worked. I thought it was, as for a prequel purpose, I thought, yes, this is the character that becomes this character. What's that character? Minute. Like, this is great. And Dennis Haysbert, well, again, I'm seeing him in a way I've never seen him play before. As the State Farm guy. I always remember him from Heat and being the president of 24. And he's great in this role. And he played the tough really intimidating. Mm-hmm. So he was great. It's good stuff. And I love the origin of that character that we get in the original Sin City. To me, that was a great coup.
It was a good recast. And
I'm
unfortunate that it had to happen.
I agree, but I will say this: I'm not entirely sure. If Michael Clark Duncan was still with us today, I'm not sure he could have played that, because he was already he was a bulked up guy to begin with. Yeah. So having Dennis play Minute, you can understand a bit of the transformation that he would go to, because he's he's definitely not Michael Clark Duncan body type wise, right? So it makes sense.
It works with the
good
growth.
gap,
If
right.
you're looking at its growth, it does at least play out.
Yeah, and he was really, really good. He was really good.
Other cameos that aren't really spotlight at all: Alexa Vega, Lady Gaga, Stacy Keach.
Stacy Keach, who was unrecognizable in that.
I didn't see her at all.
Right.
You
can get.
I
his
didn't know
voice
who Lady
down.
Gaga. It wasn't until after I read who Lady Gaga was that.
Do you realize that was Lady Gaga?
Well, first
The
off,
waitress?
who Lady Gaga? Like I don't her actual appearance. I still to this day don't know what her actual appearance is because
It's tough with her.
It's an egg. It's whatever. I don't know what it is,
Yeah, no, I
so
agree.
I can't recognize.
And again,
Next time I'll tap you.
another Robert Rodriguez. I mean, he used her in Machete Kills.
Yeah.
And it's funny, in this movie, he wanted her. She wanted to be in the movie. He wanted her to be in the movie. He said, "I promise it won't be." It'd be like, we'll squeeze you in. Basically, she filmed her segment while she was on tour. She was filming, I believe, or she was on tour someplace in Texas, and I believe they filmed this in Austin.
It's right. It's a little bit
And-
outside of Austin.
And she happened to be in Texas, so she took her downtime, went over. She actually even used her own wigs to put on, her character, and she did it. She goes, "Of course, I'm going to work with Robert Rodriguez." I mean, you got to give the woman credit, And as soon as she came up, I mean, I said, "Oh, that's Lady Gaga," and she had a nice little cameo.
Yeah, she did
and-
well.
Yeah. So I always wonder if we'll end
I'm
up
not
seeing
surprised
more
about
of
the
her.
wigs thing, though.
Yeah,
Because
I
Jessica
mean,
Alba,
I'm-
I think, does similar stuff where it's very collaborative
Right.
cast and set, and that's why they do work
Well, that was
together
definitely
so
part of the
much.
story
Yeah.
with the wigs.
And I think with Lady Gaga too,
It
she has
is.
proven to be a chameleon. You're right. I mean, she can look.
I mean, in Machete Kills, that was the whole just an ever-changing person.
Right, absolutely.
So-
and as a performer, she seems to be an ever-changing,
Just a person in
right.
general,
And-
she seems to be ever changing.
Yeah, so like if I were to bump into her in the street as just her being herself, I'd probably not go. Oh, and somebody could go, "Hey, you just bumped into Lady Gaga. What?"
See, I disagree. I think she would be walking down the street on an average day, like dressed in Velcro or something. Maybe like I just think that's in general.
With the sign that says, "I'm
she's-
stuck on you."
Exactly. Perfect. Glad you got that.
Perfect. All right. Well, you guys want to go down each story?
Sure, I mean, why not?
Let's do it. Just another Saturday night.
So just another Saturday night was
Marv.
Yeah, but I'm trying to remember because we do have ones that were written for the film, and we have ones that were based off.
Long Bad Night.
Is
that,
a short story.
That was written. Joseph Gordon-Levitt's story was specifically written for this.
And
yeah,
if I-
and there's one more.
And if
also.
I'm correct, Long Bad Night was
Just
a
another-
never authored. Well, it was a never authored comic.
Yeah.
Like that's what Frank Miller had in mind for the continuation of Sin City as a graphic novel, I believe. If I'm wrong, I hope the fans will let
Someone
me know.
will let us know.
But
Just
I
like
believe
what Peter Gunn.
Peter Gunn. Yeah. Hey,
The
it's
infamous
still a
Peter
great,
Gunn
it's
story.
Still, it's still a great theme song. Anyways, but I still think that I think that his story never made it to comic, but it made it to screen.
Yeah.
And then we had who I'm trying to think of the.
And there's
other-
Nancy's Last Dance, A Dame to Kill For, Just Another Saturday Night, and obviously The Long Bad Night is split up into the two parts.
Right.
Do you have a favorite?
I mean, A Dame to Kill For me was the most fun one. Obviously, that's the title one. And even though Nancy's Last Dance, like using the WWE pay-per-view thing, that's the main event. Again, sometimes there's just a match in wrestling that's better than the main event, and Dame to Kill For just had so much going for it.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna give it to A Dame to Kill For, and then my second runner is actually going to be I always get the alliteration wrong. The long
Bad Night.
there we go.
Yeah.
The Long Bad Night, and then I think I'd probably go to. It kind of evens out if those are my top two.
I like Long Bad Night because it had so many twists and turns, and when you find out he's the son.
I really
he's
loved
a
that.
son. Or,
Yeah.
I
yeah.
loved that, and I thought that had so much also to all of their characters because we'd had the.
And I love
obviously
cards.
You
card-
just like watching all the card shots.
Yeah, that was great.
The cards, the driving. I'm a big fan of a Long Bad Night as well. Except, I don't know, the resolution to it all, to me, it sort of bothered me because.
It was so quick.
Well, it was quick. I never got the sense that the history of him beating him twice in the poker game was ever really going to get out, and then that character ends up dying anyways. So,
But Nancy is the one to finish it off.
yeah, but the story, the legend of him, he dies anyways.
I don't know.
But that's Sin
I
City.
kind of that's exactly what my thoughts. Like I kind of like that he died so
Yeah.
quickly because we do get these drawn out battles where people are hunt down to finalize these big epic moments. But this is Sin City, and the reason we fear it, or it's supposed to be dangerous, is because people can die in an
No,
instant.
and I get
I
that.
love
I just
that they
wish-
put that in even with the main character.
No, I get that, but prior to him being shot in the head, he went through this whole thing about, you know what, no matter what happens here tonight, it's going to get out. It's going to get out that you lost twice to me.
You know why
to
it
your
didn't
son,
work?
And then that never paid off. And
Here's
I don't care that the character died. I wanted that monologue that he said to him to pay off in some way. And it never happened. And then it was never going to happen because he...
You know why? Here's the thing.
You
You just need a glimmer of hope. You didn't get the reaction shots from the rest of the guys.
Right.
Had you had just maybe one or two reaction shots of like just literally like you know like the can like nodding of heads,
Right.
you would have made that work, and that was missing, and I think that could have fixed it.
And you could have gotten at least knowing that maybe that police inspector who was there, like you
Was
knew
gonna
that
do
he was
something.
going to be the guy that said, "Hey, this kid beat, he's not that hot. He beat him twice. He sucks at poker or something." But you're right. The hope, it never
never got to
transformed.
see it.
It never got to see that, and that was a little. It caused for the tragedy of that character because I love that character. And Joseph Gordon-Levitt is so great at that. I love the way he played with the coin and everything. He was great.
And that's what's so great because it's so visual effects. Like
Yeah.
you can do anything.
do
He
it.
could literally flip a coin and it can come out of his eyeball.
Same-
Doesn't
yeah.
matter.
Same thing with him shuffling the. I love. He goes, "Oh, how are you going to do that with one hand?" And he was able to.
I'm
just love that stuff of
ambidextrous.
him. Yeah, it was great. I mean, and he played it great. He's great for those kind of roles as well. He relishes. I mean, if I'm correct, this is the kid that was in Brick,
Yeah.
right? So he knows noir and how to talk the talk, so to speak, and he did it.
Let's
It
meet for
was
lunch.
awesome,
Remember
yeah.
that line?
Yeah.
What are you doing for lunch?
What are you doing for lunch?
All
He's
right.
great.
So then let's talk about the one that Saturday night. For me, to me, that was the lowest one only because I mean I like Marv enough, but it a couple of frat kids and him misinterpreting the thing about Bernie and all that. It was
It was fine. I think that it's already we already know what a badass Marv is, and I felt like that's why it was there.
Right.
It was supposed to prove that he would kind of destroy anything, anytime, which is why we'd be like, oh, he's going to jump on and help all these other storylines because we already know he does this
Right.
for fun.
Yeah.
So let's put this in. It'll be interesting to watch, and it shows what Marv's like. I already knew what Marv's like. That wasn't hard for me to believe. I just think that. So that was just it was more like reassurance. It wasn't a bad storyline. It was shot really well. It had some fun imagery, but it was stuff I already knew. I
Right.
already knew he was capable of it. I already knew he was going to help. And it was only about him. We didn't have any really other characters that were part of it.
Which is
so-
an interesting observation, too, because if you go in that 9-year gap, and within those 9 years, Sin City itself as a movie, people know about it, but a lot happens in 9 years, and then an audience can tend to, maybe they don't revisit it as much. So you're trying to get in a new audience for that audience that never saw the original Sin City.
Yeah,
you
because
know,
he's at the hospital and he's like, oh, I just wish they shot me.
Right.
So we both know the outcome of this, and he's
Yeah.
like, oh,
Yeah,
And he just
so I mean,
recovers.
it's an interesting, you're right, because then it makes you wonder if they had stricken while the iron was hot, and they put Marv into the movie, and the sequel came out within 3 years, say. You're saying this about a movie that came out 9 years. It sounds like you might be saying the same thing. Like they didn't add anything new to his
Yeah.
character, And for us, because we're fans, we know.
Maybe
but,
it was to
I
show
don't
us
know.
that he's still alive.
Yeah, he
I
was a
don't know.
fan favorite. He's and his dialogue is always rich. I don't know. I think you bring up an interesting point.
I think it's hard for us to address because we all are fans and all
Right.
have seen the first one, so we're not looking at
Sure.
this as a new audience.
Right.
So if you guys haven't seen the movie or didn't see Sin City 1,
Go back and see it. It's
Yeah,
on
first of
cable.
all.
It is on cable like almost every day. I'm not joking. That's how I was able to revisit it. I was like, oh, this is on. All right.
There you go.
And I can
Yeah.
see it from beginning to end. And I was like, oh, okay. And again, I am struck by how the movie looks. And, when you talk about film noir, okay, the main thing about film noir is its use of lighting and shadow. And darkness
Well, which is
and
now
light.
it gets lost a little bit. Like there's movies that can do spectacular things with light, but now your average movie, as long as it kind of looks lit and everyone's good, we're good.
Right.
This you have to everything has to be so particular. I mean, we
course.
talked about there's so many examples, but even with Eva Green, you have to the way you hide her breasts versus not and things like that. You have to do it right.
Yeah.
And it's all about who's in light, who's in shadow, who's black and white. I noticed most of the women, if not all the women, were the only ones who got a color treatment
Yeah.
at all. Men were usually all, I can't recall anybody who was male that wasn't black and white, but yet all the women had a glow in a particular scene. Eva Green, her eyes really stood out too.
eyes, lips,
Yeah, everything about her.
blue jacket.
And but that was obviously intentional. And again, in this pulp, again, I call it chroma key noir. They're able to, Robert Rodriguez and company are able to readjust the lighting to fit what we love about noir films to begin with.
And it's just funny because they do have the different methods of it now where they do some lighting on set, but so much of it he
Sure.
does in post. And
Yeah.
it's totally a different process.
Yeah, you can add a digital light here. Okay, we need a 3K here. Blah blah.
Yeah.
You just do it that way.
And I
It's all
want
the
there to
shadows.
be snow, rain. I can manipulate my weather, and
Yeah.
of course, any film noir is not without its rain.
Yeah. Have to have that
And
weather.
that's why I love when he was doing Spy Kids. I forget which one in particular, but he just went to the kids like, okay, we have a fight scene here. Just act like you're fighting. Well, what am I fighting? Just with the sword, whatever. Just act like you're fighting. And then in post production, they just literally based off of what they were doing.
Sure.
They added in somebody else, to make sure that it worked. So I really love that type of stuff. The other original was Nancy's Last Dance.
Which is a funny title to me because, I understand.
You understand why?
She
is
has
it?
80 dances in this one,
Yeah, but then it's
So
her
I can't
last
explain-
one.
It's leading up to her last one.
where she's no longer a dance and she's going to become new version of Edward Scissorhands.
Yes.
Okay.
That's it.
All
Yeah.
right. Sounds good.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's interesting too, because we were talking about this before sitting down, that Marv dies in the first Sin City. And so part of his story is either prequel, and then it goes into worlds that, then how does he end up with Nancy?
I just don't understand
And-
this. I just don't understand. Give him a prequel. That's fine.
Sure.
Totally for it. I don't get how he can then interact with her when she has scars, because that is obviously
Clearly
blatantly
after Hardigan and- right.
Yeah, but he's back. So I guess he's resurrected.
I guess
or
so.
never died. Or they have really, really good doctors
Yes.
in Sin City. Everyone knows
It's
that.
just Marv.
Yeah.
It's definitely Marv.
But her story too, though, I mean, it really caps off and ends the whole Rourke. That was his name, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
Senator Rourke. It
Which
caps
is
off
it gets
that.
confusing because you have Mickey Rourke playing Marvin.
Right. Well.
Yeah.
It's always ironic to me.
Right, and then, but again, I had forgotten watching the movie without having, I had forgotten that I don't know, that troll was also
The yellow
Rourke's-
bastard.
His
Yeah,
son.
his bastard son and all the stuff that went into that, and there's so many tie-ins to these movies, but that at least this capped it off, and I also like that the Hardigan ghost had something to do with Rourke's demise.
Yeah.
As
I
well.
thought that was good because that made it validated why he was in the whole film.
Absolutely.
Because part of it, I was just like, if she's the only one seeing him,
Right.
I get it, but it's gonna bother me that they
Yes.
tied it at the end, validated that whole.
Yeah, I agree.
His whole presence for
Yeah,
me.
it made sense.
On top of that, I will give Jessica Alba, she gave me my most uncomfortable, cringeworthy moment when she was cutting her face.
Yeah.
It was like the one point that I like didn't want to look at in this film. I was so disturbed by it.
Really, even with like the stylized,
Yeah, I
what do you
don't
call
care
it,
about-
animated? Like it's still
Yeah,
it's still
just
the
the
thought.
cutting
Yeah.
of
No,
the,
I get
the
it.
self-mutilation cutting of her
Yeah.
face just really, really got me.
Yeah.
And I thought she did it with a lot of
She
conviction.
played it great.
And I thought it was an interesting just transfer for her because it's been 9 years. I know in the first one she was 21, 22, and so it was a much different role for her to experience and now to grow into that. And now she is like a mom and a wife and it's gone through in life, and now her character had this huge change. That was really fun to watch her do. And I think that you can even see her
what's great is
self-confidence
that, like,
has changed.
if you like, right, she's a mom and things like that. So like in terms of dancing on a pole, like as a mom, she would have to be over it, and as a character, she's like over it too, which I love. It's like, oh, I'm gonna
But
do
she
it. I'm gonna
goes,
do it well.
So like full out.
Yeah, we
in
get
She
these
does,
dances
but in her
as opposed to
eyes,
the first one.
in her eyes, you could tell it's like I am gonna put on a good show because I am the master of this.
Right.
But you will not know that I am.
I'm done.
That's how
This means
effortless.
nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Listen, Jessica Alba, she seems to do her best when she works with Robert Rodriguez.
Yeah.
I mean, she really does. And you can tell that she wants to do great by him and then vice versa. And that's why in his movies, she's great, you know?
She's a good person. Her and Maria are very close friends.
Yeah, and
she's a good person.
She has her own company, you know, and at the
It's doing very, very well.
Very well. Their warehouse is right down the street from where Technicolor is in Ontario. Always hoping that maybe I'd get a drive-by, but it never happened. But listen, her life has changed. She doesn't do movies and or TV, except when Robert Rodriguez says, hey, I have a part. She goes, okay, this will be fun, and it's extra money. You know, I can buy more baby food.
Yay!
All right, let's. One of the things I want to talk about the production side of things. Obviously, using the images from the Frank Miller comics, they're very specific, and I liked in the first one, right? I don't know how I don't know if he actually knows that he does this, but he's very specific with the guns that he has, or any props that are in the comics are very specific and real lifelike. And I don't know if it's like, I don't know, the spiritual thing where he just knows that it exists somewhere in the world, but they're always able to find whatever that piece is because it's so very specific, even though he was just like, yeah, whatever, doodling a bow.
Yeah, I don't necessarily believe, without knowing Frank Miller, but just being familiar with it, everything's intentional.
Yeah.
Like what he does as a writer and as an artist, you know, what he sets out to do. And I'm sure on his part, there is research to an extent to bring some, you know, he knows he's drawing bizarre worlds or new universes to set these things in. So I don't think there's anything that's, I'm just going to doodle a gun.
Yeah.
I think there is, to bring a bit of a realism to it. I mean, I like the guns that are in Sin City.
But it's amazing, like, if you really listen to people in the production side, they're amazed at the specificity.
Yep.
They're like, you know,
That's
in the
the
first one, there was like, oh, that was one of 3 cars made in 1948,
Right.
you know, and it's like, we had to get that one. And like, how did he know that was one of 3?
Well, in this movie, he was, one of the characters was driving a Tucker.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, that's the other thing. I believe the cars were in color as well. And I loved the use of cars in driving, and it made Finn's look cool again. And, you know, and then one of them was like, he's driving a Tucker, and the character says, yeah, this is a Tucker. There was only like, you know, there were only 200 of these made. And there were. And then there's a great movie called Tucker, A Man in His Dream, with Jeff Bridges playing the title character. But it's fascinating what he puts into the movies because they are sort of out of place, but yet they fit in so well because they're from a different time. But the cars just look so cool. And when you get people like Josh Brolin, Joseph Gordon-Levitt driving them, it adds that James Dean cool factor to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they look really cool.
They absolutely. Anything else you guys want to talk about in terms of the production side of things?
I mean, I think we mentioned it a little before, but I think on the production end, one of the things that I think is just fascinating, we've kind of called attention to, but really haven't pointed out, is that they make these movies in one vicinity where like everything is together, and that's why he can film so quickly.
Right.
Because it's all the editing room, the sound room, where they're, putting all the soundtrack together, where they're filming each scene, everything's in this whole separate universe. They get to kind of just pick up, go to this place outside of Austin. It's in, I believe, an abandoned airplane
probably a hangar. Yeah, absolutely.
And it's just their own little world. And it keeps them focused and it keeps them quick, and it's just something that I don't think a lot of people have access to, and I think was just a dream that Rodriguez came up with and fulfilled, and I think it's amazing. So I just wanted to call some attention to that.
And I don't know how to make the full comparison, but with this, obviously it's so much green screen, and to me, the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbits, they're so much green screen, but they move at such a slower pace, and partly because they're filming way more material.
Yeah. And they're filming on location a lot.
They're filming on location. They have to
absolutely.
There's a lot more that they have to be able to piece together versus in Sin City, you kind of get to make it happen, even if
that's
it's
what's
not
so fun
there.
to me is just they get to create this world, but just hey, make believe that this is there, and okay, and then just they just go. It almost seems like they'll take whereas every other movie, if there was a problem, they get so bogged down by it, where I feel like Frank and definitely Robert Rodriguez, they just look at it and they're like, all right, let's just use it.
Well, they'll even say the acting portions that they film with the actors, that is the sketch, and then they fill in everything else.
Yeah, and don't forget.
So it is it's the outline, it's the meat, but it
And when we broke down 300, though, we did talk a lot about how they filmed 300 with all the green screen and in that one studio. I mean, it does provide an efficiency for your production team. Now, with that said, I don't want to see every movie made that way, but when you're talking about Sin City, it has to look a certain way, and the only way to achieve that is not filming on location, but filling in the location as you go, and to have that specific idea. It helps that you have Frank Miller on board, because he can map it out for you and say, well, this is how it's going to look. Robert Rodriguez is all.
I mean, that was first and foremost. Even with the first one, he was like, I do not want to make Robert Rodriguez's Sin City. It's always Frank Miller's Sin City.
Right. And
this one, they even dived more into that,
Sure.
where on the first one, they were trying to find this median between the graphic novel and between film, and they met in the middle, and they said for this one they wanted to go full graphic novel.
Hypothetical. With the first one, there were special guest director Quentin, and obviously they're all friends and they have the same sensibilities. But what do you think about having guest directors for portions of each of the stories? And maybe it could have been Quentin, but who else could fit that mold, and who else?
Are you asking for names, or are you asking if I think it would work?
Both,
because I think as long as you have Frank Miller, and if their basis of inspiration is the graphic novel, that's a strong enough thread and a strong enough vision that I think that different directors it works, because you are following a different character's point of view.
Sure.
So if a director can identify or really be inspired by one character, I think it works.
Yeah.
Because the through line is Frank Miller. The through line is the graphic novel, and it's so distinct that you can't really get far enough away from that it wouldn't mesh.
And I think, the reason I say that was because, if we're looking for something new within that space, by adding a different flavor of the week, we can...
For me, that sort of kind of becomes a little bit too gimmicky. It almost strives and says, hey, we're desperate. Maybe Frank Miller and Robert Rodriguez don't have it anymore, and maybe they're not drawing the attention, so we need to bring in this young guy maybe they bring in a Gareth Edwards or somebody like that.
What was that movie 40? I get what you're saying. Movie 46, where they had different actors.
But again, I look at a movie 46 or a shitty movie, but even a Kentucky Fried Movie and such, or those movies, Amazon Women on the Moon, Tales from the Crypt, all those original anthology movies, the Twilight Zone with John Landis. I mean, you would bring in a Steven Spielberg and stuff because you were making an anthology. This is more. It's really hard to call Sin City anthology. It's very episodic in which there's crossover.
I mean, it's hard with this hypothetical question, because you can rationalize it that could work or not work. If you have some big studio head coming in being like, I want to put all these directors in one film because then I can advertise as all these directors, then most likely it's not going to work as well.
And-
but if
and
you
the-
have like 5 directors coming out being like, we love this world, we have these slightly different views on it, we want to work together and collaborate, then it could be a masterpiece. You don't really know. I think it could work because the material is strong. I'm not saying it
but
should.
The material, like the one example that I come up with, which in its day was a bomb, and it's sort of ironic because we talked about a remake of the original Casino Royale, which had people like John Huston, Woody Allen, and so many directors were involved with it, and it was a spoof on James Bond movies. And that movie did horribly. And I think when you look at anthology movies, too, it's sort of kind of tough to do. I'm not a huge fan of the anthologies because I always come out feeling that some stories are better than others and that they don't, an anthology doesn't mean that every story has to tie into another one. Sin City, I think with its episodic nature, they do tie in. And we were talking about how not only can we tie it into A Dame to Kill For, but we can go back to the original Sin City, and it just flushes out this episodic world. And that's the way comics are, too. Mm-hmm. Comics are very episodic as well in the way that they tell their story. Each one can have a beginning, a middle, and somewhat of an end, but they'll have an arc. And these stories have an arc where in an anthology, each story has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Yeah. And it's only 10, 15 minutes long. I don't know. I'm not sure it necessarily always would work with Sin City, unless you were putting together an anthology, like a true anthology movie, which those are hard to make. It's hard to get them in, I think.
Now,
what do I know?
I want to continue.
That we all know.
This is going to be a different debate because you kind of touched upon it, but the irony of the 3D. By the company that made the 3D.
Yeah.
And you raved about how amazing it looked. And actually, you know what? You'll be pleased to know, Demetri, Sarah and I saw it in 3D too.
Oh, okay. That's very fascinating.
Well, so then we've all seen it.
Okay.
Now, why did you mention that there was an irony to it?
Well, there's an irony to it because the name of the company that did it, Prime Focus, was the company that did the visual effects, okay? Prime Focus, like this movie, they were hanging their hat on this. Visual effects, just as a quick primer, within our universe, within the past 5 years, it's becoming sort of a dying breed. There have been a company called Rhythm and Hues, which has gone out of business, and many people have lost their jobs. Yet they worked on the Academy Award-winning Life of Pi. Thank you very much. They did Life of Pi, and even though it won Best Picture, effects houses, they're losing their steam. This Prime Focus. It's really interesting because they were a company that worked on the original Clash of the Titans, and this was a time when the studios wanted to push 3D because they saw it as bilking. I'm gonna say they saw it as additional revenue because we can do a ticket upcharge, get more money. And Clash of the Titans was one of the first conversions because the first Clash of the Titans was not filmed for 3D. So this Prime Focus came in, they did the conversion. It turned out to be one of the shittiest conversions ever. It nearly killed 3D.
It will forever go down.
Right, it really will. And now they come back and they've done some other projects. And there's a whole thing because they were started off in India. They wanted to be a big effects company here in the States. They moved to Hollywood thinking this is where it all is. And then as soon as they set up their offices, they realized that everybody's moving to Canada to get the tax incentives, and they're like, oh shit. They're like, okay, so they go to Canada, and then they start building back up again, and they actually have stake in Sin City, A Dame to Kill For, and it seems to be the tragedy of this, they're just snake bit, this company, because if there's going to be a redemption as far as 3D, as far as Clash of the Titans, I think it works in this movie. I mean, I really thought that the 3D in this movie,
really good.
With the snow, the level, the layers, when there was breaking glass, I know it's all. It just
there's
looked.
just random scenes, also just do you remember? It was just a tiny snippet of the television.
Yes.
That looked great.
It looked great, and it's it's where I feel the strengths of 3D work. I mean, there are many negative people out there on 3D. I think the technology has gotten so much better. And when,
A movie like this is great for it.
It's great for my friend Ryan. When I said, "Hey, this show is an XD," this, and he was like, "Well, okay." He goes, "I'm not really keen." He goes, "It doesn't matter whether I see this in XD 3D, but that's fine." When we were walking out of the theater, he's like, "I am really glad we got to see this in XD 3D. It looked amazing." And it benefited. And again, I think that's because of the technology. You really can set up your shots so that cinematography-wise, it's the levels of
The
3D
parallax, they call
it's
it.
going to be great.
All right, is that what
So,
it is? I'm
yeah,
not making that
Well,
up.
you also have to thank Rodriguez for this because Miller was against it. Frank
Yeah.
Miller did not want the 3D for this film, and he was finally convinced.
Yeah.
Because Rodriguez was pushing it.
Yeah, and I really think that the movie benefited from it. I mean, it added, again, if you're a newbie and you saw it in this format, you're going, wow, it really did bring something new. It elevated what the first movie looked like, and it did what a sequel, it brought it to the next level and really flushed out this universe. And man, I just couldn't stop talking about, God, this movie looks so good.
Yeah.
It looks so good. So it worked. It worked. in
did.
this.
It worked on so many levels, except for, unfortunately, let's talk numbers. To
Yeah.
Why do we have to leave on the shittiest part of it all?
People not butchering this movie, but like really being hard on it.
I don't understand. It was ninth overall, 6 million, got beat out by Expendables.
Which had its own controversy by being like downloaded illegally 1,000 billion times.
I
Well,
just
45% on Rotten Tomatoes, which
Mostly like 2.5 stars from most
Yeah.
critics.
B- cinema score
Oh, that's higher
on
than I
this,
thought.
which is again for a B- in regards in the cinema score universe, it's really not great. It means that your word of mouth is not going to be so fantastic that it's going to perpetuate weeks of
Yeah.
moviegoers. They're going to say that it was okay.
how about this? If you're listening,
Tell people to go.
yeah, because you've obviously seen it, because you wouldn't be watching this if you didn't. You know what? Grab that person, right? JTE. No one can hear you or see you, okay? So at least talk. JTE. Have you
what's
seen
up?
this movie?
No, and it's funny.
I see. Do this.
I don't
Get
have a lot of
off your
interest.
ass.
Don't
Go
do it.
shake
Keep
up
it-
that person and be like, go see this movie.
Go see it.
You just blew out someone's eardrums. That wasn't nice.
I think it was JT.
Apologize.
He's bleeding.
I apologize for my passion for this. No, I will not apologize for my passion for this movie. I apologize for my rudeness.
Nah,
with
to your
Vega
ears.
Lizard.
You liked it that much.
It is a crime that this movie's not doing better.
Do you like Sin City?
I like the first one, don't love it. And the second one, the trailers didn't really do anything much for me. And
All right,
word-
mute your
and
mic.
honestly,
Mute your mic. Mute your mic.
word of
You're
mouth,
done. You're
not
done.
great.
Mute your mic. Mute your mic.
Yeah, but you're getting great word of mouth here. You know, and again, I do say that this movie is better than, I think this movie is better than what is led to believe about this movie.
Absolutely.
And again, we keep on going back to this. 9 years has done its damage. I mean, you know, when you get a cinema score of B-, I think that, you know, if you want to call the original Sin City a cult status, that may have worn off. I truly believe that people have forgotten what Sin City brought and what it had to offer. And then going into this, people are just looking at it as another special effects kind of, it's done with special effects and technology. And they had forgotten what made the original Sin City so cool. Yeah. And this movie has all of those characteristics. It looks very cool. It sounds very cool if you like that. If you like this sort of thing, which
That's
a
what I
lot
love.
of
The
people
sound.
did.
They
Yeah.
take away a lot of sound and just focus on what they want you to focus on.
Yeah.
And it's it's unrealistic. Sometimes you don't hear the city at all,
Yeah.
but it's great.
And it looks really good. Like JT, I don't think that you would hate the movie. I'm not picking on you. I'm not going to get
Pick
up
on
and
him.
yell at yet. No, but I think that you might like the movie a little bit more. Like, look, I'm not. Am I going to say that it was like one of the best films of the summer that I walked out going, "Oh, my head changed my life"? No, but I did not walk out of there saying, "Well, I was really entertained. It delivered what I wanted it to deliver, and I
Exactly.
expected it to deliver." And it was Sin City, a Dame to Kill For.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't think, not, oh my God, I saw something completely brand new. But I saw what I wanted to see,
Yeah.
and I loved it, and I loved the people who were involved in it. I thought the acting was really good, and I thought it was just a fun world to kind of escape into for a while.
It's a fun movie. Yeah, it is a fun world.
enjoy
I enjoy that world.
We're gonna end on the fun stuff.
Yeah.
I don't want to get too deep into the negativity and things like that. So this has been Sin City: A Dame to Kill For.
Nice.
That was great. Good job.
Thank you, JTE. By the way, the music in this is it's just fantastic.
I agree.
It runs the gamut. And again, Robert, right? He always puts shot and cut by Robert Rodriguez or whatever. He also does the music and he always oversees it, so it's great. Demetri has a Twitter.
Yeah, oh yeah. I'm still climbing up there. I think I have 24 people following me now.
That's 4 more than last week.
That's 4 more than last week. So
it's 24 more than me.
I'm sure the day that you get on Twitter, you're gonna like go to 1,000. I'm scratching and clawing just with 24. But I follow a shitload of people, and that's what's fun for me. So yes, it is DMovies1701 at DMovies1701. And follow me, watch me. I love to post about movies. Today, I think I had 4. I was busy this morning. There's lots going on.
Look at
There's
that.
a great. I tweeted a great thing about Star Wars. Sorry, I know this is, but there is a great footage that wasn't used in the original Star Wars. It's black and white. It's the cantina. Oh my God! Follow me on Twitter just to get that tweet. You'll love it. Awesome.
All right. Well, unfortunately, you can't follow Sarah, but you can listen to her every week here on Anatomy of a Movie, as well as the fan Q&A, the news, and all that fun stuff. And you can follow us here on Movie Anatomy on Twitter, anatomyofmovie.com, and for
Whoa! I broke a chair.
What do we
I'm
got?
falling.
I don't know.
I'm falling and I'm kicking. Like literally.
That's a good place to end. When things fall apart, we end. See you guys
The
next
center
time.
cannot hold.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the rest of the Anatomy of a Movie staff, we would like to thank you for listening and subscribing to the show. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email or tweet us. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been Anatomy of a Movie.
Keep my eyes off that killer babe.
Thanks for watching Anatomy of a Movie on YouTube. For more on your favorite movies, subscribe to our channel here and be sure to let us know what you think in our comment section below here. Bye.